This is Dr. Stephen Jones, and this is Lecture 3 on Inventory Control Models. I know, third lecture. Seems like it's going on for forever. But again, the math in this one is not difficult. It's not complicated. It's just theoretical. And it's just algebra. But there are different parts about inventory that are complicated, and so tried to break it up into 3 lectures this time that hopefully will be just a little bit shorter. So now we've looked in prior lectures at the economic order quantity, whether you're ordering the inventory or whether you're ordering production that you're going to put together. We've looked at reorder points, we've looked at safety stock, at quantity discounts, and at just the basic idea of minimizing the total cost of carrying and ordering the inventory out there. And so we're going to take a look at some other variations on this same theme that need to be looked at. The first concept is that idea of a single period inventory model, in that there are some times that you do not get to just hold inventory in stock. That at a point it becomes useless to you, and they bring out the news vendor problems out there. So yesterday's newspaper is good for lining bird cages, if you still have bird cages, is good for that kind of stuff. Typically because people would want today's newspaper. Well, in today's newspaperless society, there are other things that follow a similar pattern. And while it might not be a single period like a one-day period, it could be relatively limited. So we put preservatives in bread so that it can sit on the shelves for a few days. But if you're going to a bakery that bakes its bread, day-old bread is what's used for croutons and breadcrumbs and so on like that, because it doesn't have the same level of preservatives into it. Bananas will only stay on the shelf for a period of time unless you freeze them and dip them in chocolate. So what we're looking at here is perishable, instead of steel widgets that might, last for a couple of years on a shelf. You're looking at stuff that has a short inventory usefulness period of time. And so what you want to look at is your marginal analysis. What's the marginal profit by ordering or producing an extra unit or 10 units versus the potential loss? So if I order an extra bundle of bananas to have in stock, what's the chance that I'm going to be able to sell them all and make profit off of it? And what's the chance that I'm going to not sell them all and lose a fair amount of the stock that's brought in? And that's what we're going to be looking at for the next couple of slides. So if you're looking at a marginal analysis with a discrete distribution, then you are looking at probabilities here, and as opposed to other kinds of distributions, we're going to look at it discrete distribution. That is one widget or one banana, as opposed to fluid measures or gaseous measures or anything like that, where it's much more minute on the distribution out there. So we're going to look at probabilities, and you're going to have probability that the demand is greater than or equal to a certain supply, the probability of selling at least that one additional unit out there, versus the probability that you're not going to be able to sell it. That is the probability of profit making versus the probability of loss. And that's really what you're looking at here. What's the chance of a marginal profit? What is the chance of a marginal loss? and what's the cost that's cost or profit that's associated with each one, and the probability that goes with them. So if your expected marginal profit is MP, the marginal profit, it has a probability. You have another probability, which is 1 minus P, that is the opposite to that. So if the probability is 60%, then 1P would be 40%, and that would be times the marginal loss. And that's going to be a distribution out there. It's not going to be just one. The probability is 60%. No. It's going to be at different levels. We're going to look at that in the next chart. If then you can come up with those probabilities and what the potential profits and losses are, you can create yourself a chart, and you can do it at the different levels and use this equation right here that you have. So first, determine what the value of the marginal loss is over marginal loss plus marginal profit for that problem. Get yourself a probability table, and you'll see in just a moment. Get yourself a probability table and do a cumulative probability column to go with it. And then determine when at a point you have bypassed the chance that you're actually going to make a profit. Okay, so in other words, you continue to order inventory until you get to the point where you say, look, if I put any more on the shelf, I'm running too high of a chance that I'm going to lose my shirt. So, Café du Donut. The cafe buys donuts each day, and it costs them $4 a carton of 2 dozen donuts. So they can get a $4 carton of 2 dozen donuts. They're going to sell those out there, I'm guessing, with their coffee and their water and everything else that they're selling at this Café du Donut. And so if they are able to sell a carton, they're going to be able to sell that carton of 2 dozen donuts for $6. And if they lose that, if they can't sell the carton, then it's going to be $4 loss. It's a total loss. If you can't sell it, then it's gone. There's not a residual profit that you can get out of that. That's how this problem is set up. So, if you were looking at cartons of donuts, the likelihood that a daily sale of just 4 cartons of donuts is 5%. That's the probability P that's what it's going to be at. And you'll notice that it goes up to probabilities of 8 cartons and 7 cartons being the most likely scenarios of all 7 scenarios that they present here. It does not appear that they are likely to sell 0 cartons, 1, 2, or 3 cartons of donuts, and it doesn't look like they're likely to sell more than 10 cartons. So we're looking at a discrete distribution here of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. They're not selling 4.5 or 5 2/3. They're selling those sets of cartons. And that's what your probabilities are. So we're going to determine this value of the equation, and you do that with a $4 cost of the carton, because remember, if you lose it, the marginal loss on this is a total carton loss. And then you divide that by the $4 for a total loss, and the marginal profit is $2. It's not $6, it's $2. So you're going to make at most $2, and you will lose $4. So 4 over 6, which is 0.67. So that's what you're looking for as a probability. You're looking for, as long as your probability is still 0.67 or higher, that you're going to be able to sell all those donuts. And that is the column that you find on the right side here. Okay, so we know that we're going to sell at least 4 cartons of donuts. We're going to continue to buy donuts. So we'll buy at least 4 cartons of donuts, and there's a 100% probability that we are going to sell that. P equals 1 at this point. When we get to the 5 donuts, then it's at a 0.95 probability. So we're going to sell, definitely we're going to be able to sell the 5 at the 0.95 probability there. You go to 6, it drops to, now you would say, now wait a minute, why is this not 0.95? Because 1 minus this 0.05, but that's not it. It's at a 1 because we know we're going to sell at least 4. That's the bottom level that we have here. To go to the next level, then we take a chance, 0.05, pardon me, we're going to take this 0.05 here out of the 1. And so that means we have a 0.95 chance of selling 5. And we have a 0.8 chance of selling 6. Now, if we were to go on to 7, we're going to be finding ourselves running a little bit of an extra chance, because the probability of selling 7 or more donuts, while it's still pretty, you could calculate this all up right here, and you could say, wow, that's still a pretty good set of probabilities. That's 0.65. which is what's over here. That's 0.65. That's true. But remember, while that's a 65% chance that we're going to sell 7 or more cartons, our marginal, excuse me, our marginal loss over marginal loss plus profit tells us that when we get to the 0.67 level, it's a wash. The likelihood of us not selling and the likelihood of us selling gets us to a wash, an even. We're breaking even at that point. So if we take the chance and buy another carton of donuts and go to 7, we are running a higher risk then of actually not making a profit, of losing some level of money. Going 4, 5, or 6, while if we purchased 6 and we only sold 4, while that's a possibility, the probabilities out there for you are you can still get to 6 cartons of donuts, so buy those extra cartons of donuts. Running to 7 means you're definitely pushing some of the envelope, and 10 is right out. You definitely don't want to do that. So we should keep ordering cartons as long as we can keep our probabilities up higher. Now here's a different kind of analysis. This is not a non-mathematical analysis, but instead of looking at inventory as purely 1 unit at a time, you're looking here in terms of control at trying to see which of the kinds of inventory that you keep control on, which items are the most critical to your operations, and therefore the ones that you need more scrutiny with. And so if you have more scrutiny on, in this case, items that have more criticality to your operations, you're not wasting time paying close attention to all the items out there, just the ones that are the most important. You'll do a cursory glance at the least important ones, but you'll keep a sharp eye on those that are the most important ones to you. So you want Group A items, Group B items, Group C items. Group A items are the major portion of your inventory cost. In this case, they say 70% of dollar value, only 10% of the quantity of the items. That's just numbers thrown out there for you. But here's the case. Group A items are more expensive and more critical. And the expense may not be in how much they cost you, but how much it costs you if you don't have them. Let me give you an idea here of this. When I was growing up in Kansas, we had a couple of oil refineries, one on the north side of town and one on the south side of town. The one on the south side of town had this real problem. Every so often, several times a year, they would blow a valve in the receipt of oil into this refinery. So the pipeline right there at the refinery would blow a valve. And this was not an expensive valve, as I understand. It was not an expensive valve, but it was an important valve because it's the one that would shut off the oil coming into the refinery. The refinery only had so much of a holding capacity. And if they could not shut down the flow of oil in that pipeline, they had to burn that oil off. And I'm going to tell you, it stunk up the town, and it lit a huge candle fire all over the south side of town. And so, not paying attention to that valve, and there were times when they didn't have them on hand. I know that because for several days they'd be burning off the excess oil that was coming through. Not paying attention to whether or not they had a working valve there whenever it did blow cost them a lot. And so it's not necessarily the actual cost of the item, but what it costs you potentially. And that could be the cost itself or the cost of not having that item there. That would be a Group A kind of item you've got to pay attention to. A Group B item would be something that is more moderately priced or moderately important to you, and it's going to take up about 20% perhaps of what your inventory is. It's important, but it's not likely to shut down your operations if you don't have it. Whereas Group C items are a dime a dozen just about, okay? There's a lot of them out there, but you don't need to worry about them. As long as you got a box of nails, you don't have to go and pay attention to each separate nail that's out there, okay? You don't have to go count the number of nails in the box of nails, as long as you got maybe, quite often it'll be like you got a pound of nails. You don't have to see that you've got 1,000 in that pound or 100 in that pound or whatever that would be. You just know you got a pound of nails and that's close enough. When it gets down to half a pound, then you order some more out there. But that's the most important. And sometimes you can just look at the box and say, okay, there's enough nails in there, that's fine. But if you were on the A item list, you'd be counting each and every one of those, because not knowing how much of that inventory was on hand or if it was the right quality could be detrimental, very detrimental to your operations. Okay, dependent demand. Now we're at the point where it's not just that you know that you need items, but you know in advance that you need items, not because of how many's getting sold of that specifically, my widgets. But I know on my widgets that anytime I order a widget, I also need a gadget and 3 budgets, okay? So in this situation, needing a certain thing either brings out that you need to have other things that go along with it or things that make it up. So if I'm going to have, say, an airplane model. My son loves to put models together. He puts airplanes, cars, whatever, action figures together. So if I was going to have, as the producer of that model, if I was going to have that model that I was going to put out on the shelf, then I've got all the list of those different things that have to go with it. Think of it like an IKEA or other put together furniture part. If you don't have 8 bolts that are supposed to be in there, then the customer is going to be really unhappy. So you have to be sure that you've got planks A and 2 of B and 3 of C and 1 of D and 4 of E. Plus you've got to have bolt double A. You need 8 of those, and double B's got to have 14 of those. You got to put all that together, and that becomes your package. So now if I have one new package of table 1, 2, 3, table 1, 2, 3 contains all of those separate items. And that's what you need to produce. So I'm not just producing bolts AA, just to produce bolts AA. I need a certain number of bolts AA because I have this table that's going out there. And let me get down to it for a moment. That's what that kind of chart looks like. We'll go back on those others in just a moment. But that's what that kind of table looks like. If I'm going to have an A, then that A means I've got to have a B and a C. And if I'm going to have B's, then I have to have D's and E's. And C's, I'm going to have E's and F's. Okay? So in the end then, I'd have 1A that includes 2 B's, 3 C's, 2 D's, 4 E's, notice we've both got E's here, and 2 F's. And that's materials requirement planning, that you understand that it's not just ordering the structure, it's ordering all the little pieces that go with those structures. And I bring it out as if I was still back there making tacos in a taco restaurant in my college days. If I'm going to make tacos and burritos, then I've got to have certain components there so I can do all of that. I'd have a scoop of beef and a scoop of beans that would go in one tortilla, along with a scoop of cheese and a scoop of sauce, okay? And if there's not enough beans, I can't make any more burritos. I could make tacos, but I couldn't make any more burritos. So material requirements planning tells you in advance, it's not just have a vat of beans on hand, but understand what are the finished products that you're trying to sell out there, and then what are all the parts that have to go in with that. So as we go back to this, the material requirements planning out there is complicated, but not mathematically complicated. It's just complicated to understand all the moving parts that go into it. So if you go through a process of MRP, you're definitely going to reduce your inventory costs, because I'm not just going to order a vat of beans or a box of widgets, okay? I'm going to order a certain number of widgets because I'm making a certain number of larger products. And I'm going to understand all those little costs in there, because if I'm trying to make the table and I haven't paid enough attention to the number of bolts double B that I need, and I run out of them, I will have extra planks A, B, C, D, and E, and I'll have extra planks, bolts double A, but because I don't have enough bolts double B, I can't make my table assembly. And so having not paid attention to bolts double B now shuts down the entire process. So this helps me to think in advance of all these little pieces that are important to the whole process. The process of doing this then is essentially what I've just been talking about. A bill of materials where you say, okay, this is the larger thing that I want to make, and this is how many I want to make of them, and here are the different little components that go in as part of it, and I need to make sure that all of those are part of this process. And we're almost done here. Then you get to just-in-time inventory control. This is where you actually do have instantaneous inventories that's coming in, as the EOQ is based on. Just-in-time inventory control, as I'm sure that you've seen before, is the idea that I don't want to have any excess inventory of anything on hand. I'm going to reduce that as much as possible. And so essentially what I'm going to do is get in partnership with my suppliers, and my suppliers are going to be the ones that keep the inventory on hand and get it to me as quickly as possible. And so likely I'm also going to pay a little higher for the inventory that does come in, but overall I'm reducing my costs because I don't have as much that I'm carrying as work in process or finished goods. And so the Kanban system is what's used to try to set that up. And as it says here, Kanban means card in Japanese. Essentially what it is you're looking for a supplier who can be set up very close to you. In the Japanese system, typically your supplier's right next door. That's how it can be just in time, because you may even have a conveyor belt that's going between their facility and your facility, so that as soon as you flag, hey, I need more widgets A, they can put those into the system and get them right over to you almost instantaneously out there. Now, it does require a great partnership and a lot of trust between supplier and purchaser to be able to pull this thing off. If you can do it, everybody's costs can go down, because essentially your supplier would need to do the same kind of thing with their suppliers out there. You can't have anybody that's fallen down on the job here. But the amount of discipline is rewarded by overall having a lot lower costs. And this is essentially what the Kanban system looks like. So you and your suppliers and any producers that are out there work together, communicate out there together, and provide a system that allows you to synchronize your operations with your others. Folks, enjoy, and I'll see you with the next chapter. Take care.